let's move over to Greenland just real quick. Is this a big story? Could this like for me it seems kind of silly and funny,
Yeah,
the whole thing
right.
about Greenland, but then I'm thinking that potentially this could be a huge event because it could maybe turn the Europeans against the Americans, and this
Yeah,
could also help break the empire.
right. Well, yeah, it's both of those things. It's ridiculous, it's silly, and it's also potentially history making. It's all these things at the same time. Well, it is silly because there's absolutely no need for us to take Greenland. The only thing that you could, if you're looking at U.S. interests, is that maybe you would get these mineral rights, which could be quite significant. But that's not, maybe that's the ulterior motive. But what the stated motive is security. And look, it's part of NATO. And we already have a base there. We've had dozens of bases in the past. We could simply request or basically demand, additional bases, and Denmark would immediately say, sure, sure, whatever. The security argument doesn't make a bit of sense. It just doesn't make a bit of sense. So it's the thing, and so it's just silly. It's just ridiculous. One thing I actually just learned the other day, the person that suggested this idea of taking over Greenland to Trump was a very interesting character named Ronald Lauder. It was the heir to the Estee Lauder fortune. And you look at this one guy, he's connected to all these different, geopolitical hotspots. He just the other day, I noticed his name because he is on the board of this consortium that was awarded a contract to exploit the largest lithium deposit in Ukraine. It's in central Ukraine. He was part of this mineral deal. So he's there, but he was the guy who back in 2019 suggested this whole thing. Yeah, why don't you take over Greenland? And he's also an avid, fervid Zionist, very close to Likud. He was the head of the World Jewish Congress. And in that capacity, he met Putin back in 2016. He does have business interests in Russia, too. So anyway, it's just one of these globalist kind of characters there that you run across. And then, he's involved in this. There, and I hear there is I think already some sort of company has been created that involves Bill Gates and other, Jeff Bezos and, these other, oligarchs basically, to exploit mineral resources in Greenland. So, maybe that's part of what's going on. That's the only thing that would sort of make sense, right? But the cost of it would be huge, because it's an attack on NATO. This is really quite extraordinary. Well, but the thing is, I wouldn't say this is the first attack on NATO. The first one was Nord Stream. And in a way that was even bigger, but it's been kept hidden and they're trying to do whatever they can to obfuscate it. But here's a second very open attack. And this is obviously going to put NATO under tremendous strain. I mean, I don't think there's actually going to be any fighting. It might, it seems like it's probably going to happen, that Trump's really dead set on doing it. And if he really wants it to happen, I think it will. There's just no way that the Greenland and the tiny little forces that the Europeans are sending over there are going to prevent him from taking it if he wants to. And then, look, there are only 57,000 people there, and he could just pay them off, They're talking, I was thinking you give each 100,000, that's less than 6 billion, but they're talking about 700 billion, what, I don't know, maybe paying off the Europeans or whatever. That's a lot of money, actually, even for us. That's a lot of money. So we're either going to just buy it or get it through bribery, or we'll just take it, with our military, and it, completely unnecessary, and will have tremendous consequences. It's obviously, I don't know that will be the end of NATO, but it will be certainly the beginning of the hollowing out of NATO. It may just exist on paper. You just say, wait a second, it's not Russia that's attacking us. It's the United States. And people maybe will start to look back at Nord Stream and talk about that and say, well, this is a second
Right.
attack. And I guess at the same time, I kind of find the whole thing sort of funny because there really is no huge humanitarian issue here. Like in Iran, okay, if this attack happens, the Iranian people could really suffer. There's a danger of a wider regional war that could even go nuclear. This is really scary. There's nothing scary about Greenland. It's just stupid, and probably nobody's going to get hurt. The Greenlanders will probably make off like bandits. They'll lose their cradle to grave health care, but they'll each have $100,000 at least. And, that's the American way, I suppose.
Yeah, it's just interesting because the Europeans have painted Putin as this imperialist, that he is just going around and he wants to just grab territory. But I mean, let's just look at things objectively.
Yeah.
Who is the imperialist?
Right, yeah.
It's the United States. We're invading, Venezuela. We're carrying out strikes all over the world, bombing Nigeria one day, and then in the Middle East the next day. And then we tell our allies that we're going to just take Greenland, this huge landmass that belongs to Denmark, because for national security, when they're like, wait, if you need to put military bases there, you already have one anyways, and you're part of NATO, so we can just do that anyways. There's no reason to just take it. So I think that narrative, of just Putin as this unprovoked, imperialist is just going to start to people. They can't hold these two thoughts in their head at the same time. Yeah. U.S. good, actually taking Greenland, and then the Russia, horrible. And like you said, there's just so much ammunition for the Europeans, if they want to turn on America, that will resonate with their populations, with their citizenry. Like you mentioned, the Nord Stream. I was just watching this clip again, and I was trying to download it and put it, but I couldn't get it up here. Maybe next time I'll have it. But it was just where Biden specifically says, he's standing up there in a press conference. He's like, if Russia invades, we will end Nord Stream. We will end it. And the reporter just says, how are you going to do that? That's Germany. And he said, we will end it.
Yeah.
Definitively.
Yeah.
And so just the Europeans need to see that again. Yeah, it needs to be on mainstream media in Europe over and over again saying, who is really attacking you? America's taking Greenland. America destroyed your economy by blowing up the infrastructure here. NATO expansion. This is a U.S. foreign policy that your country has decided to adopt just recently.
Yeah, because
10, 15 years ago, you were against it.
Right.
And so all of this, everything that's happening now is because of America. And you can put out that messaging and it will resonate because it's true. And the truth resonates with people when they hear it. It's just so many people in Europe have been fed these convoluted, confusing narratives of why things are happening, and it's Russia's fault, it's China's fault, it's North Korea, Iran, the mullahs, and and it's like, I guess maybe that makes sense. It's so complicated. I guess so. But then once they hear the truth and they see Biden saying these things directly from his mouth, they will understand. And then it's over. And then you have this huge geopolitical rift, that's like, you know what? And we're already seeing it happen because there's so much hatred towards Trump from amongst some of these leaders, like Canada. I mean, the president, I forget, don't even remember the guy's name, whatever, but he's been talking to China more and realizing that, okay, the U.S. is not our friend. China is actually honors their agreements and they want to do business and they can benefit your country.
Right.
So just be rational. Right. We see the way that Trump is acting. One day he might give you $40 billion of your Argentina for your beef. And the next day he might just slap a 50% tariff on our country, or he might just decide to bomb you, or he might just kidnap your leader. It's like, who knows?
Right. Well, we saw something similar. You mentioned Canada and how it's turning to China. The same thing's happening in India. That Trump slapped the punitive tariffs on them, and that actually since then, since the relations with the U.S. started to go sour, the Indians have turned strongly towards China, and their trade with China is really taking off. And it just makes perfect sense. You say, why? In the end, we can get everything we need from China, and without having to pay these costs. The political humiliation, the economic costs. We don't have to suffer any of that.
So do you think that there is a chance that as things progress and if the U.S. really does take Greenland, that we could see the Europeans actually turn on the Americans, and because they realize as well that this war in Ukraine can't be won, and it's destroying us. Let's shift all the blame on the Americans and end this madness and cut a deal with the Russians and learn how to live with them. And then the animosity sort of just pivots towards the United States, and maybe the Ukrainians themselves will realize, like, hey, we were lied to. Everybody's dead, and our country's destroyed, and it's because the U.S. promised us this huge, I don't know,
maybe one day you don't see it happening anytime soon. You still, the Europeans and the Ukrainians are still adamant. They have not really changed their position, by a single iota. But like you say, at some point, reality, I think, has a way of winning out, and it's going to become increasingly hard to maintain this position over time. Both because of Russian advances, but also because of American behavior.